What is up, guys? My name is Brian. I am one half that Pugido, and I'm your coach of the Charlotte Beedrills, the draft team that floats like a Butterfree and stings like a Beedrill. And today we are bringing you part two of the UGA Season 2 Johto Division draft reveal. So, if you didn't know, we did part one over on Matrix's channel. Say hi, Matrix.
Yeah, guys.
Yeah, we did part one over there, and we're gonna do the remaining teams over here. Joining me, as always, is the wonderful Matrix. We've got Masenko. Say hi.
Hello there. I'm Masenko.
And we got the amazing Oddball joining us as well. Say hi.
Hello.
So, yep. So, without further ado, I figured we'd go ahead and get started with these teams. Next up, we
Yep.
have Aegis slash Blades.
So we'll be running this the exact same format as what we did over in my video. So if you haven't already seen it, make sure you go and check it out. Link will be in the description. I'll give my score straight off the bat, to be honest. Eggy slash Blades, I have placed down at 13. Now, I am slightly salty about the snipe for Politoed. I really wanted that. It was sniped round 2. I was hoping to get it as my third pick. But the rain mode is definitely interesting with the Politoed Kingdra. He's got Regieleki, but he's also got Electivire. Two electric types there.
I figure they do different things though. So I
Yeah,
think
they
it's
do.
okay
They
in
do
this
do
respect.
two different things, and you can enable Electivire with Regieleki with like discharge motor drive. You got Lurantis as your grass type. You got Sentinel Scorch as a fire type. So he's got the fancy. He's got the fire water grass core. Now, what really sticks out is does he have a dragon type? Yeah, Kingdra, Steel,
Kingdra,
Fairy.
yeah.
He doesn't have a fairy though, does he?
No,
Mimikyu.
Mimikyu.
Mimikyu. I forget Mimikyu's a fairy. So he does have the fantasy core as well. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is he's got the rain mode, but he's mainly got the rain mode for the Aggie Slash, I think, to kind of
Yeah.
mitigate as much damage from that Aggie Slash as he can.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of evident by his team logo. He's a big fan of Aggie Slash.
Yes.
He was actually
you-
talking about it before, that Steel and Ghost was one of the best, if not like the best typing, like typing combinations as far as weaknesses and resistances, and being able to sort of mitigate even one more of those weaknesses just puts it in a really solid position.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of the plan I had for my Metagross, really. That same idea of getting that rain mode to kind of mitigate one of its weaknesses.
Yeah.
Really interesting is he's got the rain mode, but he's mainly got the rain mode for the Aggie Slash, I think, to kind of mitigate as much damage from that Aggie Slash as he can. I think it's kind of evident by his team logo. He's a big fan of Aggie Slash.
Yes.
He was actually talking about it before, that Steel and Ghost was one of the best, if not like the best typing, like typing combinations as far as weaknesses and resistances, and being able to sort of mitigate even one more of those weaknesses just puts it in a really solid position.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of the plan I had for my Metagross, really. That same idea of getting that rain mode to kind of mitigate one of its weaknesses.
Yeah.
And then Mimikyu is a fantastic trick room setter by itself. Can't forget a little bit about that. And then if you play the Aegis Slash right, you can take hits with its 140 defense and special defense, and then attack with the 140 attack and special attack, thanks to the stance change ability.
I will say though that the one downside of Aegis Slash is in the Dynamax format, you generally don't want to Dynamax it just because you can't switch forms with it when it's Dynamaxed, right? So yeah, I mean, like, not that that's terrible. Just not being able to Dynamax it as often, but it is kind of a limiting Pokemon in that regard. Because if you could do that, Aegis Slash would be insane in a Dynamax format, right? Like if you could switch back and forth. And another thing is Mimikyu, right? Also not the most prominent Dynamax Pokemon, just because its disguise mechanics and whatnot.
think disguise works when it's maxed, doesn't it?
It does, but it's
Yeah,
just
it works.
You're not really going to be one-shotting a max Mimikyu.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Mimikyu on this team is a little more supportive because it does have access to very reliable Trick Room. It can't be faked out. Taunted if you have a mental herb on it, like you can choose to run that and it's pretty much guaranteed to get it up. And that really kind of helps with Lurantis, which actually kind of strong with Contrary Leaf Storm and things like that.
Yeah.
And Centiscorch, if your opponent is really on the speedy side, you can kind of underspeed them with that option.
Is that the Trick Room mode here isn't super reliable, right? Like, there's nothing that really takes advantage.
We talked about Centiscorch with Optic. Oh, that's really good, but it has to have either the Iron Ball or the Room Service in order for it to be a more viable Trick Room option.
You see, I think that's kind of one of the reasons why this team, for me, it ranks so much lower. Is that he's got a good Trick Room setter, but he doesn't really have the mons to really take advantage of that. You know.
Yeah. And even
get the Trick Room up, but then you have to set to get them on ready for Trick Room.
Yeah. And even Rain, I think on this team, you have what, Kingdra and Aegislash. Like, I know it's kind of good with both of those, but
could
it
run
feels
Thunder
like
on Regieleki.
Aegislash is really
Thunder on Regieleki. You could run a special. You could run a special Electivire, but if you are really opposed to Recoil and Wild Charge.
But really, I think I just don't see a lot of damage coming out of this team.
Yeah, I see. Kingdra, I just don't like it. It's a tier 1 pick because of it is good, but it doesn't do the damage you want it to do. Most of the time, people run it Life Orb, and I think its base special attack is like 95, and it just doesn't hit that extra bit that it needs to be hitting for a lot of these mons in Series 7. And I know that it did well in Players' Cup, I think. Players' Cup 2, those.
It's everywhere in Series 5. I remember when it was first released, it was everywhere.
But that's Series 5, and we're now in Series 7, where we got access to all these new legendaries, these more bulky mons, these more offensive mons. And I think Kingdra a lot of the time just falls a little bit short as to perform. Especially, I know draft leagues are opened up for a wider variety of mons, and it's not exactly the meta. I just feel like Kingdra as being one of the main damage dealers here, other than maybe Aegislash, Regieleki, which isn't the most reliable for damage, and Centiscorch. Lurantis needs a bit of setup. Electivire is a little bit slow. It's just lacking that little bit of initial oomph.
I think we're missing out on talking about two pretty important Pokemon for this team, being specifically Butterfree and Torracat.
Litten.
Litten.
Or sorry, Litten. My bad. So Litten and Butterfree offer some pretty interesting tools to the team. Litten in particular, I think, does it get Intimidate? I don't know if it does or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Intimidate.
Well, then there you go. Gets the Fake Out. It's just basically a mini tier 4 Incineroar, which is nice. I don't know. Does it get Parting Shot?
I would argue it's more a 10-4 Torracat than an Incineroar.
Yeah, it doesn't get
same line though.
Right. Well, and Torracat is a tier 3. Is a tier 3 Incineroar.
Parting Shot an egg move, or is it a level
Parting
up?
Shot is an egg move, so it can.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I never.
So you can get Parting Shot. So it basically brings all the utility that Incineroar can get for a tier 4 pick. Just doesn't have that insane damage that comes along with it and that same bulkiness. But then Butterfree is an interesting pick too, just because it gets the redirection with the Rage Powder and it has Tailwind. The only thing about Butterfree is that it's incredibly squishy and on the slow side. So
it's always going to be running Focus Sash.
Yeah, it has to, and if it's even if it does that, it's still it's still pretty slow, so it's not guaranteed that even if you just double up into it, the tailwind is almost not getting off most of the time.
I've already given my ranking of the team. Have you guys given yours?
We have.
I haven't given it outwardly. Mine is number 15 out of the 16. I think this team is good. It certainly isn't a bad team. There's a lot going for it, but I do think that it just doesn't have. Oh God, how do I even put this? It doesn't have certain core things that it needs to really. I feel like it's got a little bit of everything, but none of the particular pieces themselves stand out to be exceedingly good. I don't think there's I think personally it's going to be kind of hard to find a star player for this team. I don't think there's any particular Pokemon here that really shines above the rest.
Yeah, I see that.
I put it. Okay, go ahead, Masenko.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
I was just gonna go ahead and give my ranking. I went ahead with I gave all mine maybe 20 minutes prior to getting notes, so I didn't have really much of a thought process. I put them at 8, and I think now what we talked about, maybe it needs to be a little lower. I mean, to be lower or higher.
I mean, I think 8's a fair place to put it,
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
for it's a middling option, to be fair.
It's got the options there to where it could surprise someone, or it could do a whole bunch of damage. But again, I think it's also not there. I put my star player as a Regieleki, but that's really just because I didn't see anything else that really deserved.
Just because it's Regieleki, and Regielecky's actually kind of an insane Pokemon.
Yeah. And then my weakest link, I went with Lurantis, mainly because you do have to respect the Leaf Storm Contrary, but it's really slow, and he doesn't have a fantastic mode inside, or a slower mon, really good. He doesn't have the most reliable Trick Room other than Mimikyu. Well, he's got the Trick Room Setter, but he doesn't have the mons to work with in Trick Room.
Yeah.
I think that concludes the Aggie/Blades. Let's move on to
the Cardiff Komalas.
Oh, the Cardiff Komalas. Another fellow Welsh player. Well, actually, he's English, but he lives in Wales, so I'll take him.
I'll take him under your wing.
Yeah, so I know his Discord name's Orange Soda, so we'll refer to that for now. He's first impressions: Gmax Venusaur, Lipard Sunny Day, Lipard Rain Dance with Kabutops, Dragapult Clefairy, man. Super solid core. Just them two alone is just a great combination.
He's got split weathers. With the Lipard, setting the sun for the Gigantamax Venusaur, and setting the rain for the Kabutops.
Does Lipard get hail?
Magneton gets thunder.
No, doesn't. So you got Magneton, which is a solid tier 4 in my opinion. Probably
one of the better ones,
maybe the
for
best
sure.
best tier 4 he's picked. I have a personal bias towards Glaceon. I know a lot of people dislike Glaceon. I really like Glaceon. I think it's a great mon. I think this is a great pick for him. Sigilyph, I believe, is the only Trick Room setter on his team.
You would be correct in saying that.
Yeah.
But it does get Trick Room and Tail Room.
It does. And a bunch of other things.
Hello?
Tail Room. It gets Tail Room.
It gets Tail Room, yeah.
Make your mons faster so that they can go slower.
Marowak's an interesting pick here.
It steamrolled us last season, or at least it steamrolled me last season.
But that was on a Trick Room heavy team. Now,
Yeah.
this team, the only Trick Room setter is Sigilyph, which is kind of way too fast for Trick Room. And Marowak really wants to be hitting things first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's good Lightning Rod, but it's not really providing Lightning Rod for anything there other than Sigilyph.
And Kabutops.
And it doesn't get a special, and ground Pokemon don't get a special defense boost with
Exactly.
with
So
special attack boost, excuse me, with the lightning rod. It's just an immunity.
And then the
It
other
already
one
has.
And then the other two mons he's got, Grapple Locked. I low key really like Grapple Locked. I think it's an interesting pick. He's already got quite a heavy, top heavy team. Not top heavy, but he's already got good top tier mons in Clefairy, Lipard, Dragapult, and Venusaur. So I rate Grapple Locked as being a nice tier 4 pickup when he's already got that solid offensive pressure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Silvally, I don't think we need to really mention type cores when he's got Silvally.
Yeah.
He's got his type cores.
I think it's a better trick room setter than Sigilif is, personally.
Does Silvally get Trick Room?
I mean, Tailwind, excuse me.
It doesn't get Tailwind this gen.
Yeah.
Doesn't? I could have sworn I saw it when I looked it up.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's my initial impressions of the team. He's actually my week 1 opponent, so it's been interesting that with some of the prep I've had to do for him. So I won't go too much into what I think he can do.
I think for me, the biggest strength for this team is its speed control. I think it definitely has so many different options. Just being able, like, it has some of the fastest Pokemon in the game in the form of Dragapult. If you can get Sun Up, Venusaur, right? Getting Tailwind with the Sigilif is really cool. Being able to set up Rain Dance for the Kabutops is good. Like, just it has so many different options. Getting Trick Room up enables a lot of different Pokemon here. And then of course you have like Prankster, which is another form of natural speed control in the form of Lipard. So like everything there just kind of like he can kind of dictate the speed of the game in a lot of ways, which I think is the biggest strength of this team. But I do think that when it comes to like the distribution of power on the team, which Pokemon are going to be hitting the hardest, I think it's a little bit difficult in some ways to figure out exactly who's going to do what in what game, right? Like I think Dragapult and Venusaur in general are the most consistent forms of damage, but then everything else kind of feels maybe average or below. And I think Marowak can be really good here, but once again, you guys mentioned, it doesn't have the reliable Trick Room. I think Sigilif is an excellent secondary Trick Room setter, but I do think you need a better primary Trick Room setter in this situation.
Yeah.
For that reason.
That's what I agree with. So I've ranked the Cardiff Kamalas as my number 12. And I think it's just because, yes, good sun mode, but I think Venusaur really prefers a natural drought setter over a prankster setter in a lot of situations.
Another thing to mention is there's no fire type on this team.
Exactly.
Which means that the core isn't quite there as well, and I think that the fantasy core is also a little bit weak on the weaker side.
Water.
Yes, but Kabutops.
Never mind. Yeah,
but he's got Silvally, and he can just fill in them types no matter what. So when you have a team with Silvally on the team, you can basically dictate whatever type you want.
I kind of almost disagree though, just because like even though you're right in the sense like literally on paper Silvally can fill that role. I don't think that Silvally like adequately fills any particular role, which is kind of its downside,
I do want
right?
to mention Silvally is flat like 95s across the board. Like it's Kingdra, but
it has good stats. It's certainly. I just think that like when you look at fire types in general, they're offering sort of like a specific role to the team that's not just like doing fire damage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
And I think that like just doing fire damage isn't why the core of the grass, fire, water like core works. I think that just like there's a bunch of associative characteristics to each of those types that also synergize, right? And I think Silvally, the upside and downside is that it makes you're able to fill those, you're able to fill the sort of like holes there, but when it comes down to it, Silvally really is just kind of like a stat block, you know, like a big ball of stats that like hits hard with his multi-attack, but other than that, like, it doesn't offer a whole lot of utility to the team.
So we know my ranking is 12. Where have you both placed the Kamalas?
I also placed them at 12. It's got a lot of the modes that I like. I like weather. Well, weather's one of my favorite modes to run, but it just doesn't have enough pieces of that weather enough for me to rank it any really higher than it is.
I put them at number 8 for myself, so middle of the pack, and I think that for me that's still in a pretty appropriate rating for them. I think regardless of its flaws, this team does have probably the most important aspect of Pokemon VGC down, which is that
especially
speed
in
control.
Generation 8.
Yeah, which is that speed control.
I agree. So, Oddball, your thoughts? Do you agree with that placement?
I think it's a pretty versatile team. You've got some obvious things here and there. Maybe some mons that could surprise you, like Glaceon Grapple Locked with Octolock could be interesting.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think it's a pretty passive team, if that's a lot to say. Because like your strongest attacker is Dragapult, and that's what base 120 attack.
Mm-hmm.
Then you drop down
125 special attack, 105 attack.
I think that's reversed.
Yeah.
And then you drop down to Venusaur, and like you can get some damage out of Venusaur, but you have to max it to do so.
Yeah.
And then you drop down again to something like Kabutops or Silvally, and I think it's kind of got the same issue as maybe the last team we've seen, just being, it's a little underwhelming. Like, you do have that weather, and you do have that excellent speed control, and you really control the pace of the game with this team. But I feel like there's just not enough there to finish it off a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But I will have to see kind of how they deal with that, because it's like, just based on the draft alone, it kind of sounds like they've got a plan, and I mean, if they can execute it well, I mean, they could be sitting pretty well. So I think I'd place them around number 10, maybe number 9. It's imbalanced. It's imbalanced. Because you've got a lot of good mons, right? You've got Grimmsnarl, you've got Kartana, you've got Incineroar, like classic Pokemon, right? That you would see in VGC. And you've got like Intimidate and Fake Out, and you think, man, that's good to have, right? But it's also those mons that really, like, other than Grimmsnarl, which can kind of do different things, you only really going to be bringing 1, maybe 2 sets on Incineroar and Kartana. And then outside of that, you've got like a little bit of rain that kind of helps Kartana out a bit. Like, but still, like, it's 4 times weak to fire.
Even inside rain, I believe a lot of fire type moves can still one-shot Katana.
Especially special fire type moves. Physical fire type moves, they are a little bit more difficult to get to work. I know that, so it's
Even
a little challenging for that
vest
to actually work out. But special moves are just going to eat through Kartana, even with Assault Vest. It's surprisingly electric weak. Like, it might not look it, because it's got Kartana, it's got, Volt Absorb Jolteon, it's got an immune
Piloswine.
But like,
yeah,
if
but
you
I
had
see
something, you have, like, even just like any electric move, or say you had a, like something that resisted water that had an electric move, like you can just kind of sweep through their team if you have like fire and electric.
Volt Absorb isn't even as great as an immunity as Lightning Rod is, because Volt Absorb doesn't redirect. You'd have to switch into the mon that's being targeted by the electric move. guess wrong, then it's basically just gone in and for no reason at all.
Oh yeah. And like, it feels like there's no special attacker here other than Blacephalon, and Blacephalon is.
Well, Jolteon has a
quite
pretty good
used.
special attack.
Jolteon.
Oh
But
yeah, Jolteon as well.
I do
which
agree.
is kind of good with like
Question mark?
electric and Shadow Ball maybe. But
You got Suicune as a special attacker, Pelipper as a special attacker, and
both
Orbeetle.
have
but
like maybe
That's
80
bulky.
in their
Yeah,
special
Their
attack.
rolls
gonna
aren't
say.
to specially attack. Their rolls aren't to specially
Suicune
attack.
has
so.
Suicune
Yeah.
has 90 base special attack.
Well, that's all right.
Suicune a lot of the time is more there as a tanky support
Yeah.
in most scenarios.
It really is run as like Tailwind, Icy Wind, Snarl, Helping Hand, Fake Out Immunity.
I use it as a water type Arcanine
Yeah.
without Intimidate a lot of the time.
I can see that.
Now, the biggest gripe I have is the fact that he's got Suicune and Pelipper.
Yes.
They both
I don't know.
kind of
I kinda-
fulfill a similar role as being a bulky, supportive water type. Both have Tailwind. Both are too slow to really use Tailwind without something like a Scarf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They picked
I
up
just feel
Pelipper
like
first, I believe. Or
with them
second, I
both
don't know.
being. Sorry, I think I might cut off. I don't know how much you heard.
No, you
No,
were
you're
fine.
Okay.
You were saying something about both being bulky water.
Yeah, they're
types.
both bulky
Support.
water types. Both offer Tailwind support, but are quite too slow to really fully utilize it outside of Choice Scarf. Because
You don't
of
want to
obviously
lock
what.
into Choice Scarf Tailwind.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, a lot of the time, yes, they'll live to set off the Tailwind, but what they're next to might not, you know? And I just feel like having two tier 2 water types that both have Tailwind kind of offer the same role. Yes, Pelipper activates Drizzle. I just feel like they could have a bit more diversity within them tier 2 picks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't really spoken much about this team yet. I think you're correct in your evaluation of it. Sort of like it has a couple redundant Pokemon, I think, especially the Pelipper and the Suicune. I think that's a pretty solid point. But I do think like most of these picks that he has are very, very high value. Like for
They're
their
high
tier.
value, but do they really work together well?
I think
Like,
some
you've
of,
got
I think some of
Jolteon,
them
right?
certainly do. I think that like I think like you cannot underestimate how well Incineroar and Grimmsnarl can fit into most teams. I think just in general those Pokemon are insanely reliable.
Yeah.
Kartana is a powerhouse. Jolteon is a very very powerhouse pick for a tier 3. It does a ton of damage, especially in rain. You can set up with thunder and stuff like that's pretty good. And I think does it get Weather Ball? No, I don't think it does.
Yep,
Does
gets
it?
Weather Ball.
Yeah, so you can even
Pretty sure it gets Weather Ball.
You can
Most
even
evolutions get Weather Ball. Most
Yeah.
evolutions get Weather Ball.
So in that case, you can
Pretty sure
even
it does.
do like you have plenty of water types on the team, but if you really wanted like a strong, like high special attack water move going off in rain, a Weather Ball isn't the worst thing ever. So yeah, so like I just think like, even though these Pokemon don't have maybe the most synergy that they could, I do think that like the core of like at least the water grass fire core is really strong here. I think that like I just think that like the picks themselves can't be underestimated. I just think like each of these picks feels really strong. You have Blacephalon, who can't be underestimated. That Pokemon does so much damage. I just think like even though the synergy maybe needs to be a little bit adjusted, like and maybe you pick something other than like the Suicune or the Pelipper. Maybe you switch off one of those, or
He's also got 2 fire types.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Like maybe you pick a couple more things to maybe shore things up. I still think like this team has a ton of utility, has a ton of powerhouse Pokemon. I think for especially even Orbeetle is like a really strong tier 3 Gmax Pokemon.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
I agree.
so like everything
Maybe he
here.
can find a way to do a Gmax Gravitas team at some point. That's something.
Maybe.
Gmax Gravitas with
Thinking
Hypnosis
that.
Poliwrath.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. But
He
either
also
way,
has
like
he has three tailwind setters. He's got the Golbat, he's got the
Does
Pelipper,
Golbat
he's
have
got
Tailwind?
yeah, it should.
I don't think it does. So,
I know
Crobat.
Crobat certainly
Crobat
does.
has it.
Let me check.
Crobat has it.
I don't know if it has it in this one. It does not. It does not have.
No, I
Tailwind.
didn't think it did. I didn't
Okay.
think it did, which is why I
That
think
makes sense.
Golbat's such a weird pick.
Yeah, I'm looking here and I don't see what the Golbat does particularly well.
Okay, so I've got them ranked as my number 14, and I'll get more into it when I come to discuss the star player and everything. So I'll let you two tell us our rankings, and then Oddball, fire away.
Yeah.
Bryan?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bryan.
I've got Dark Lord's Greninjas at number 11 on my list.
Masenko?
I have them at number 6, so I do think they're a top 6 team at least. This is a very good team.
Okay.
I'm just gonna go ahead and probably rank the team. I think it's probably 13th or 14th for me.
Okay.
It's like you on a baseline. It's got Incineroar, Grimmsnarl, Kartana, Blacephalon, Jolteon. Like all of these are, wow, that's good value, right? But I don't. The more I look into it as I team build against it, I think it's something that you have to get a feel for because it feels strong at first, but there are cracks everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's pretty big cracks too, because like you've got the same type and the same weakness like 4 times over on the team.
Yeah.
You've got Orbeetle, Kartana, Piloswine, and like those are all weak to fire. You've got
He's got 5
Pelipper,
rock
Suicune,
weaknesses.
Poliwrath, Golbat, all weak to electric.
He's got 6 rock weaknesses.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you've got like it's a little. It feels the whole team feels like it should be good, but it also feels redundant. I think
Yeah.
Feels
with a lot of
repetitive.
things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I have
and
the
that's
team
kind of
at
the
an
issue,
11 at the moment.
I
It's
personally
It's kind
still.
of the issue though, because it's repetitive, it does one thing really well. Like if you don't have an answer to Incineroar, Kartana, Grimmsnarl, Blacephalon, maybe Tailwind, Poliwrath, or Jolteon in the back, you won't be able to deal with it very well. But the instant you really have like 2 or 3 of the counters out of however many it has, really, like the team falls apart a little bit. And yeah, that's why I kind of ranked it so low.
Okay.
That's fair. Okay, so let's move on to the next team.
Sounds good. This is the London Lucario.
And this is my team. This is the team I'm going to be facing. This is my week 1
Yes.
opponent.
The London Lucarios. Okay, so I'm just going to say it. It's very Trick Room heavy. It's Trick Room and nothing else. It's Trick Room will go home. And I'm not going to spend too long on this team. I ranked it as number 15. I think its Trick Room mode is good. I'm not saying it's not. But that's all it is. It's fast.
Yeah.
The team's fastest mon is Sandaconda. Gmax Sandaconda. It base 70 something, like 71, I think, is its base speed. And
Yeah.
its slowest mon, I believe, is tied between Escavalier and maybe Torkoal. I think it's like base 20, 25, around there.
Mm-hmm.
That's. It's just it's go slow. Or not at all. If you can deny the Trick Room, which, let's be honest, you can because of, the Trick Room setters are Dusclops and Cofagrigus, which are both ghost types. And yes, you've got Copycat Purloin, but neither of them 2 Trick Room setters want to max, other than a meme weakness policy Dusclops.
Yeah.
It just feels like you can deny the Trick Room, or you can the Trick Room mode is good. Outside of Trick Room, I just feel this team is going to be severely lacking.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys move on.
Yeah.
When I first saw, I'm gonna go ahead and sort of lead this one, if you don't mind. When I first saw this team, I saw that it had Trick Room setters a little slower than mine, so that kind of I mean not Trick Room setters, but Trick Room Pokemon a little slower than mine. So that's why I put it a little higher. Let's see, what did I put them at? I put them at 6, but that's just because I was looking at it and I was like, okay, its Trick Room mons are slower than mine, so it probably has a little better Trick Room in mind. But also, there's not a lot of now that I'm looking at it now, there's not a whole bunch of power to go inside of that Trick Room. We've got Torque Hole, and we've got the S Cavalier as the main damage setters. There's the Turtonator, but it needs setup in order to really hit hard in Trick Room. The Scrafty there is really mainly used to get the Trick Room up as a fake out user.
I
Ghost type.
think that
Scrafty gets intimidating snarl.
Yeah, I think Scrafty provides a great utility. I mean, it's such a good utility mod.
I mean, utility, yes, but...
Yeah,
I mean,
and I do think that the Trick Room Monty has Escavalier and Torkoal are brilliantly offensive. Like, if you have Torkoal inside Trick Room, that's what makes Venucoal so threatening, is that you can't just set Trick Room to counter it because of Torkoal can just fire off eruptions inside a Trick Room. Escavalier is very bulky, and I think base 105 in both defenses, and it's so good at hitting hard. The only discrepancy I have is possibly that you've got Escavalier and Torkoal, so you're increasing Escavalier's weakness to fire type moves if you run them both together.
Yeah.
I do think, and I know I'm just cutting away from Masenko's rank, I do think this team could really benefit from like a Mon like Lilligant. If you didn't want to go really fast, because Lilligant gets Chlorophyll after you could run Torkoal and Lilligant together and get a fast Torkoal that way, and it just provides an extra bit of speed outside a Trick Room for the rest of his mons.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Masenko.
I think this team is one or two pieces away from being like one of the best teams for sure. I do think that the Trick Room mode, what the Pokemon that they have, especially Dusclops, is one of the most reliable Trick Room setters. And so, when it comes to Trick Room, reliability is really what matters the most. Just being able to get it off consistently, and then having the Pokemon within Trick Room that can best make use of it. And so, I just think that, like, being able to grab maybe, like, Togepi. I don't think anybody grabbed Togepi, right?
Togepi's still available.
Yeah, something like, just like any sort of redirection. Maybe, like, even, I don't know if... is Volcarona tier 2 now, or is it still tier 2?
Yeah, Volcarona's tier 2.
Yeah, so maybe considering like a Volcarona, but like I guess you already have a ton of
There's
fire
even
types.
Tangler and Tangrowth.
Yeah, that's another a very like I think Tangela would actually be really good.
Tangler's really good. I think that could replace Shiinotic.
Yeah, definitely. So just like one or two Pokemon, and then this team becomes like maybe the most feared team for me, maybe even like not even just because of my team, but like just like looking at it, I'd be very scared of it, and I just think because of that, my ranking for it is number 7 right now, which isn't super high, but this could, one or two trades could easily make this a top team for me. I think it brings so much power. I think that the lack of grass like power, I think Shiinotic is just not a very good grass type overall. Maybe brings it down just a little bit, but like you do have Azumarill, who we can't understate as a very powerful Pokemon with its huge power ability.
Agreed.
With Torkoal, you have Scavalier, who's an insane steel type with access to like ground type moves as well. I think it gets whatever it's called, that one that has a Drill Run, right?
Yeah,
I guess Drill Run. So like that Pokemon can be an insanely bulky Maxmon to fit alongside a lot of these other insanely bulky Mons. So like just like everything else, and then of course to top it off, you have Scrafty and Purloin, who provide a ton of utility for all of these.
Yeah.
And I think Purloin is probably one of the best tier 4 picks in my opinion.
Which is why it went so early.
Yeah. And so I would maybe reduce the number of ghost types on the team.
Yeah, I would swap out Poltergeist for some Poltergeist.
Palisand.
The sand, yeah, Palisand.
Palisand.
Yeah, Palisand out for something else.
I might even, I mean, honestly, even switch out the Cofagrigus, even though it has Trick Room. I do think that like it kind of competes a little bit too much for the Dusclops. Like I don't think of a situation where you would ever bring the Cofagrigus over the Dusclops personally.
Exactly.
So maybe you swap that out for something else.
I think this team really needs some sort of mode for outside of Trick Room, or at the very least, some redirection would benefit this team so much, even if it's just Rage Powder redirection. And I know Tangler, Tangrowth, Volcarona, maybe not Volcarona because he's already got 2 fire types, but Tangler or Tangrowth definitely, in my opinion, would raise this team's ranking up a lot more for me. It just needs that redirection. The moment it's just base Trick Room. And I think redirection would be great.
I might actually recommend Tangrowth over Tangela in this case. I usually wouldn't, but just because Tangela will be competing for Eviolite with the Dusclops. So I think maybe you go for Tangrowth over that instead.
And Tangrowth is an easy swap in with Cofagrigus.
Yeah. Magnezone.
So the Lily Cove Lichen Rocks, which I believe is a friend of Bryan's.
Yeah.
So, this team.
Right.
I think it was a unanimous. I think we all agreed on the position of this one, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we all just say it at the same time what we think?
So
this Discord lag. Yeah. Okay, so I placed it at 16. I believe you both did as well.
Yeah.
And I agree.
So it's not to say it's the worst team. It's not saying it's a bad team. No teams are bad. It depends on how the coach uses them. I just have so many.
My friend's credit, he knows how to use specifically
Lycanroc,
Umbreon and Espeon.
Yeah.
He knows how to use them.
Yes.
So.
And it's not saying that.
I have a question. Is this the first draft league your friend's been part of?
No, he's been in more.
Okay. Well, I do think that like overall the quality of each Mon is pretty good for their tier. I do think like Flareon is a pretty good tier 4. I think that Linoon is a pretty good tier 4. I think Landorus is excellent. I think Corviknight Gmax is pretty excellent. Salamence, like all these Pokemon all have like their uses, right? The issue comes with I would say there's an intense lack of synergy in this team.
Yes.
And I also think that there's a lack of solid utility as well. And I think those two things really are what make Draft League, right? Having utility to enable your Mons is super important because you have such a wide array of Pokemon that you have to choose from in the draft. And so I think this team, while it has like really good Mons actually across the board, like I really like most of these picks for what they are. I think this is like a good lesson in terms of like understanding why good draft league teams are assembled in the way they are, right?
Yes.
Because even a lower, you have to take a Pokemon with a lower like value that doesn't really fit into the meta, and you have to find ways to make it work. And you do that with synergy and with utility, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a perfect. It's an example of just because an individual Mon is good, like they all are, putting them into a limited pool to use against other Mons doesn't always necessarily translate well.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that gets me a little bit is that it's quite a repetitive team. you've got 2 Intimidate users in Landorus and Salamence, and yes, Salamence can be Moxie, but they're both 4 times weak to Ice.
Yeah.
They just die to Ice. Lycanroc is a good mon, that's okay. You got Espeon and Umbreon, which I suppose your friend knows how to use them, but you got 3 evolutions. I feel like it could have done with some redirection on the team if you're going to be running things like Linoon, Corviknight.
Does the Linoon still get the belly drum extreme speed?
Yeah.
But also this version of Linoon isn't even able to use Eviolite. Only the Galarian version can use the Eviolite. So there's that.
He's got Aquajet Crawdont, but nothing to enable. He's got.
You can enable the Landorus.
Yeah, but I don't really want to be. I wouldn't run a weakness policy. I suppose. Maybe.
It's at middling speed tier where it's fast, but it's not fast enough.
Yeah.
Like the premier Lando T is Scarf.
Yeah, he's got the Waterfire Grass Core, but it seems to be like a last-minute addition to his team. You know, like it's just randomly Tapu Bulu, Crawdon, Flareon. No real synergy there.
So why don't we talk a little bit about, since we kind of all agree that there's like a lack of synergy with these mons, maybe we should talk a little bit just to sort of provide insight a little bit, what we think would be good to trade, if the coach wanted to do that, and like what Pokemon maybe we'd keep on the team, and try to like find some sort of connecting mon for.
Okay, so I think we should probably then just go off straight away and say our star player and weakest player.
Okay.
And build upon off that. So I think the star mon on this team would be, I would say, Landorus. So good, solid mon on any team. And I would personally say the weakest mon, because if he's got Landorus, is possibly, I would say, Salamence or Linoon. And I only say that because I just feel like Landorus and Salamence are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
In most cases. So.
I'm personally a huge fan of Corviknight as a Pokemon. I think like especially in a draft league, Corviknight does a ton of stuff, right? The mirror armor can help against intimidate users. You have Tailwind. He's insanely bulky and a great typing. The Steel flying typing covers a lot of each other's weaknesses. So like Steel resists the ice weakness, and of course Flying resists the ground weakness. And Steel also resists the rock.
It doesn't get the max airstream. It gets the wind rage.
It's basically an attacking defog.
Yeah, and that's actually not terrible. Like obviously,
no, it's not.
Airstream is a very like the better of those abilities, but like I'd still think that's like still a very good, because I think defog also clears terrain.
It does.
And terrain control is like very good in any situation.
It also removes screens, which is always helpful.
So when I'm looking at this team, I'm seeing Landorus is also very good. I think the Corviknight in particular provides a ton of utility for the team, right? And like I personally value utility like more than anything. Another thing is the Umbreon. I think the Umbreon's also a really interesting, fun pick that could potentially be built around.
It's really picked up in usage back in Series 7 with all the weakness policy users around.
Yeah. So who do we think we could put on
my
the team?
MVP? I had
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Landorus, just because it is the meta threat that it is, and then my weakness link was the Linoon. It's got the baby doll eyes, but also Umbreon has baby doll eyes, and I think Umbreon's the better baby doll eyes user. So I'm not really sure what role the Linoon has on the team, even though it's pretty clear we don't really know what role anything really has on this team.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard for me to say what my weakest link is, just because I think that this team doesn't really have the synergy to identify that, right? Saying what a weakest link is like you have to know what the team is trying to accomplish. And I think what this team really needs is like a win condition and like a direction for what it wants to try to do in the game, like a strategy, you know?
Yeah.
I think another important thing to note is kind of similar to the Dark Lord Greninja team. It's got a lot of stacked types.
Yeah.
And stacked weaknesses as well. Because you've got offensive types. You've got what? Rock, flying, steel, and then maybe some like various little grass move or fire move or water move from Crawdon or Tapu Bulu or Flareon.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of lacking in sort of that balance of every type. And I think, like you were saying, even though it is a lot of good Mons, they don't appear good at first sight. I don't know what you plan to do with Espeon and Umbreon. Apparently those two work well together. I'd like to see how. But something like Salamence and Landorus, I just can't accept having both of them there, you know?
My thought is exactly.
Yeah. I think he could use a weather setter. He's got some Pokemon that have access to the weather ball, thunder, the water moves. If you can enable the Crawdaunt, that's something we can if he had something, like if there was a Rain Dance user. Is Klefki still available?
You see, yeah, I was going to suggest
Klefki
Klefki is a Mon, but it's another steel type to add to the team.
Yeah.
And
Is it tier 2? Is Klefki tier 2?
Yeah, and Magnezone's good though, so I don't I think Magnezone's fine.
I would maybe trade the Magnezone. Like
I trade Magnezone for Klefki. I trade Magnezone for Klefki.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Maybe even Bulu. For
No, I think if you're gonna trade for Klefki, it'd be Magnezone.
Yeah.
There's also an argument to be made that they just kind of need to shore up their water, fire, grass core.
Yeah, I agree. Another discrepancy I have is that I know they don't want to be leaning into Trick Room, but outside Espeon, do they even have a fake out user?
No fake out users.
They have no fake out. They've got Espeon as the only way to stop Trick Room, and I just feel...
And Espeon doesn't get inner focus, it's the Umbreon that gets the inner focus.
So I feel like if this team wants to have better matchups all around, it needs to sort out its weakness to Trick Room as well.
Yeah.
So
he can only brute force a Trick Room out. That's his only way of countering it, is brute forcing it.
So what ideas have you got?
I think as much as they said that they know how to use Espeon, I don't like Espeon. I feel like if you're using it for screens, there are better screen setters out there. If you're using it for psychic damage, there are better psychic types out there. Like you could use Hatterene instead of Salamence or something.
Yeah, he could drop either the Salamence or the Landorus for a better tier 1 that does something completely different. That could help.
You kind of have to give one up, because right now they do the same thing.
Yeah. And then I think having a weather core could help. He's got some things.
Does anybody
What do you say, Masenko?
Did anybody pick Tyranitar?
I don't think
no, Tyranitar's still on the board.
I feel like Tyranitar could be pretty okay in this team.
It would actually.
He's got semblances for a sand room, for a sand team. He's got the Lycanroc. He could drop the Salamence for
Landorus. Fits well. Corviknight fits well.
Yeah.
Could pick up a couple sand.
You can get the Tyranitar.
Yeah, and Tyranitar is just like overall a very solid mon. If you drop like Salamence for it, and then
could he get Hippowdon? Could Hippowdon fit his team?
Hippowdon could, but then it's another eyesight weakness. And he'd have to drop out one of the tier 2s. Also, the problem with Tyranitar is that it's another fighting weakness that he already has quite a bit of with Umbreon, Magnezone, Lycanroc, Linoon, Crawdon.
Yeah, that's true. I just think that like they do need to just like maybe the best advice I could give right now is to just try to find a solid core. And like even if it shares a bunch of type weaknesses with your other Pokemon, at least have that core in order to like try to win the games, because you do need like a strategy, right? Like you need at least you need something, right? You need some sort of like group of Pokemon that synergize well.
Yeah.
At least to try to pick up wins, even if that core is like somewhat a little bit obvious to the opponent that you're up against. Like the reason cores work is because they synergize, right? The reason like people win with
personally think he could even drop Linoon for Drifloon, not Drifloon, Drifloon, just for the terrain synergy with Tapu Bulu. But anyway, I think closing thoughts is the best way to say it, is that individually the Mons are good. I think they just need to create a more synergistic team and cover the bases with like fake out or redirection or anti-trick room, and I think it'll start to bring that team to a better usability.
Yeah,
agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is
Somerville Scraggies, coached by Tyler. So I've got the Scraggies ranked as my number 6. I really like this team. I think it's because it kind of mirrors my type of draft style to a degree. So he's got the Dracloak Cobalion, and we know that combo was great season 1 for me. He's got Regirock, which is a good mon, which can be enabled by weakness policy with Aqua Jet Inteleon. He's got Goodra, which is a solid tier 2 mon. Does require a little bit of enabling to be more offensive, but it does get Ice Shard Inteleon to do that. Serena is a great grass type, solid. It's got the Queenly Majesty, prevents priority moves being used against it, which is great for if you want to set Trick Room with Reuna with that thing. And Bronzor, which Bronzor, it's okay. It's okay. There's better mons, but it's okay. And Togekiss with Inteleon is great. I mean, you can literally sit Togekiss there. It's one of the better Follow Me users because it can be both offensive and supportive. You can use Follow Me and use Focus Energy Crit Teleon, as I call it, and you just hitting mons for crit with crits. So, also, can I just say, Type Null, an amazing tier 4 mon.
Yeah.
It's bulky.
It's bulky as heck. It gets Iron Defense, it's got solid defenses, plus EV Light and Battle Armor, which means you are not critting that thing. If it gets some Iron Defenses up, it's not going to die.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I say, I rank this team as my number 6. What about you guys?
This team's my number 11, which is lower than I would expect just from looking at it initially. But I do think there's a pretty significant reason for that. And my main reason for that, I think, is because it lacks solid forms of speed control, really. I think that it has some fast Pokemon. I think it has some forms of speed control, certainly. It has a pretty reliable Trick Room, just because you can redirect and also use Queenly Majesty to prevent fake out and whatnot. But like I think that like some of these mons really want like Tailwind instead of Trick Room. I think that there is some like good synergies. I think this team really wants Comfey, but doesn't have it. So there's that. So like I think overall this team is like very good. I don't, obviously number 11 is kind of low, and I think maybe a little bit too low for this team. But once again, I do really value speed control, and I think that like do they have a fake out user? Doesn't really look like they do.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Yeah, so like the sort of I guess they do have good control tools, like they have redirection and the Queenly Majesty is always insanely good. They have good burst damage with the Cobalion, but like Cobalion really wants a little bit more speed to take advantage of. The Goudreau really wants some extra speed to take advantage of.
I used to run Cobalion with max airstream just to get that extra oomph.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, Bolton's a good supportive mon. I do like that.
Yeah, I might be underrating the Bolton a little bit. I don't really know how good it is. Really,
it's very good.
It has the competitive now, so it can run a special set.
You can run it special support
it's got
or
Nuzzle.
offensive.
It's got Nuzzle.
Okay.
Got access to Nuzzle, Psychic Fangs to break screens. It's got some stuff there for it.
I think its biggest usage is in its support move pool with like Electrify, which unfortunately this team can't take control.
Is that the thing that makes all incoming things
electric?
All incoming normal attack electric?
Yeah. All incoming attacks that become electric type moves. Yeah. And I think like Regirock for say Rhyperior, now it's back on the board, would be a really good synergy with the Bolton.
I also don't think that his Inteleon makes as good use of Soak as like my Inteleon does, for instance. So there's that.
Yeah,
which
I see that. I've ran an Inteleon Soak with slower Bolton before. It's okay. But Bolton's nice because it's one of them mons that it can utilize both of its abilities. You don't know if it's going to be running strong jaw and be physically offensive, which it does do enough. It does do quite a bit of damage. Or it can be more supportive, and if it just, I'm not being funny, if you activate its competitive ability, even Snarling does quite a bit of damage.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all fair. I might be underrating this team a little bit, I will admit. I just think, I think this team does look really scary on paper. I just don't know, I don't know, I feel like the speed control just isn't there. I feel like so many other teams...
a fire type.
Yeah, another fire type missing is a big deal, but I also just
upsets
think
which upsets me.
It's missing some cores. It's missing.
It's just the fire. It's just the fire mon. It's missing.
Yeah, it's missing the fire for the core, and then it is missing the fake out. I really like fake out. It's not really there. I had him at a 14. Maybe I was overlooking a couple pieces here and there, but 14 for me. The strongest player. I got it at the Togekiss. Fantastic doubles mon. Super luck for crits. Follow me. Weakest length. I think I put I believe it was the Bronzor, because he had the Bronzong available. I hadn't picked Bronzong yet. So when I saw,
I said that Goudreau was really bulky, especially defensive, and Regirock was really good physically.
Yes, it is. That's true.
Yeah. So I said that they have some good options for bulk, but without fake out and speed control, the only things that I can really see as a threat are like beat up Cobalion and maybe weakness policy Regirock. So.
Yeah. And honestly, in my opinion,
and you got the bulky type null as well.
Yeah, and in my opinion, type null by itself is a win con. You wouldn't expect it, but it is. And I think that beat up mode, the weakness policy Regirock, I think he's got enough there offensively. Like, I wouldn't want to face this team. I do face this team, and it's going to be difficult because not only has he got some good setup offensive moves, offensive mons, but he's also got that natural bulk that both Regirock and Goudreau provide. Yeah. If I was to say my star pick, it's actually quite difficult. I think that's something that the team is. Nothing jumps out at me and goes, yes, that's the star player. But I think this team is going to be able to really utilize Cobalion. I think Cobalion could put in some work. And the weakest just because of I just think that there is better options available. I think Bronzor is the weakest link, but I don't think it's a weak mon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bronzor is the weakest link for me. It's basically Bronzong like because it still gets the imprison, but other than that, I know you said it was because he didn't bring Bronzor last year, but it's just weird when Bronzong was on the table. He could have taken.
And Masenko?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble picking like a both a weak and a strong Pokemon for this team. I think most of the Pokemon are like very balanced and each like have a very good role within the team. Like once again, I think what it really could use is like a Comfey. Obviously, someone else picked that up. But another Pokemon that I think could do really well on this team, if they can find the room for it, obviously it's going to have to take some finagling and maybe like sacrificing one of the better Mons, is to add Talonflame to this team. It's a fire type and it gets the priority Tailwind. Just something to consider. I think it could work very well for some of these
personally
Pokemon.
Dislike Talonflame, but I can see where you're coming from.
I love Talonflame. I've used it. I've used it competitively for a long time. I think it's a very very strong one. If used correctly, it does a ton more damage than you'd expect it to as well.
I think it could also do with a ground type personally, just to help that Boltund. But yeah. Oddball, what have you got to add?
I do think you need Fake Out. I think you need a little more speed control. Maybe swapping out something like Reuniclus for Gear 4 Claydol, which second time that mon has come up this kind of session, but maybe swapping out Bronzor for Claydol, getting
that could be good.
Swapping out Reuniclus for something that's
a tier 2 fire type would be good.
Fake Out.
Yeah. Salazzle is a fire type with Fake Out.
It really opens up the team a little bit.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
and it's very fast, which helps out with the speed.
Especially as his Trick Room mode at the moment really is just Reuniclus and Regirock. So a lot of the time he's not going to be really wanting to play in Trick Room, so he could probably sacrifice that unless he did opt for. So I'd say swapping Bronzor for Claydol and Reuniclus for like a fire type like Salazzle could be really good. Or he could swap out Regirock for Viperia, which is, in my opinion, the better Trick Room Mom, and Bronzor for a Fake Out user such as Scraggy.
Yeah, I mean he is the Somerville Scraggies, so
exactly
it'd be remiss of him not to pick it.
So, okay, so we'll move on to the next team. I'll start off by saying I've ranked you as smack bang in the middle, my number 8. I love Mashana. I just really love Mashana. Mashana is possibly my favorite tier 3 Trick Room setter and probably the best tier 3 Trick Room setter. And that's saying a lot, seeing I love Aromatisse so much. And I know that's not just what Mashana can be used for. But Arcanine, again, my God, you're just picking some of my favorite mons. Arcanine is amazing. It provides so much support. It can be offensive. It can be defensive. It can provide pseudo speed control. And it's just such a good mitigator, as you were saying, Masenko.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you've got Whimsicott, the best prankster mon.
Yep.
You've got
hands down.
You've got Togetic, which is solid redirection. You've got Kingler, which arguably is one of the better tier 3 G-Maxes. I really like Kingler. I've been using G-Max Kingler in another league, and I'm yet to lose a set that Kingler came. It's a weird mon, but it's worked.
Yeah, I really like the G-Max Kingler pick. One of my favorite G-Maxes. Not only just by design, but also just its move is a fantastic opposite of Tailwind, I guess. When it since it lowers opponent speed by 2, it's like an opposite of Tailwind, which is an interesting thing.
What really works for Kingler is that a lot of the time it's just a little bit too slow, and you've got that Whimsicott to boost that speed. with Tailwind, and it enables Kingler so much more.
Or the Masharna to set
being able to hit
Trick Room if it's
Yeah,
reasonable to run it.
You've got that Water Fire Grass core in my
Um,
opinion, would be Whimsicott, Arcanine, and Rotom. Kingler, yeah, I'd prefer Rotom as the bulkier water type.
Yeah, and another thing worth mentioning is that Cincino gets or Cinchino, I don't ever know how to pronounce it. It gets after you, so
Yeah.
that's another form of speed control. So I put this team at number 5. This is like when I was first looking at it, I was like, I don't know. This on paper seems a little maybe not super good. Like I don't know. I was just kind of like looking through it. It's like they got some like some of these Pokemon seem a little but then I was like, wait a minute. This team is actually really big brain. This is like big brain team. And like just like the more and more I look at it, the more I go, oh damn, this team is actually insanely good. It's got everything that I'd want for a draft league team. Like I would love to have this team if I were in your shoes. You got Tailwind, you got Trick Room, you got Redirection, you got like good typing, good immunities, good enabling Pokemon for your big carries, each of which do pretty big damage, high value for each tier that you got. Like the Kingler is a super high value tier 3, the Cincino and Hitmonchan are super high tier 4s. The one Pokemon I will say is a little maybe like I would like maybe a little bit more thought behind that I like maybe I haven't considered as the Doublade. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of
I'm
where
in
I'm
the
at.
same I'm on the same boat as Masenko. I put you really low. I had you what I have you at 13, I think. Yeah, I had you at 13, but I think that was because I made that list probably at 2 a.m. and I was tired and I probably should not have done it at 2 a.m. But yeah, this is definitely a really good debut draft for you, Oddball. I really have to say that. Definitely my star player, the Whimsicott, the best prankster user in the format, in my opinion. Weakest, maybe the Doublade, but also I wasn't really sure about the Minchino there. That's a little something, but yeah, one of those two. But yeah, this is a really good debut draft for you, Oddball.
So I like that he's got the Fire Water Grass core. I do think his fantasy core could be a little bit stronger. With being, it's just the Whimsicott as a fairy, Togetic doesn't count. Doublade as the steel, and then you've not got any dragon. So I do feel like your fantasy core is lacking a little bit. I also find that the natural offensive pressures just aren't there. You've got Kingler, which is a great great attack stat, great defense. You got Nihiligo, which is great special attack. You got Crocodile, which is pretty strong, but there's nothing that screams, "I am a threat" on that team.
I don't know. I would somewhat disagree with that.
I'd say the Nihiligo is a threat. I'd say the Nihiligo is a threat.
Yes, there's no like super meta threatening Pokemon that I see, but like the more I look at the stats on some of these, like I'm actually pretty scared of Rotom Wash. I'd be scared of the Kingler. I'd be scared of the Arcanine and the Crocodile. Like I don't know.
Rotom Wash is a threat because of it's bulky and it can be offensive, but it's more of a threat because of its bulky, because it can live hits. It's not always doing the most damage. Hydro Pumps can miss as well. When maxed, it's pretty good, but I don't know.
I think
I can
partly for me, what makes this team work is that the support mons are probably the more threatening elements of this team, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like Whimsicott, Masharna, Togetic, and like I guess Rotom to an extent, and Arcanine to an extent. Like you do have to, when you're drafting against this team, really think about those Pokemon, which like because they're diverting resources away from like just being able to straight up, you know, go kill your other mons. You know, I can't just like have a fully offensive team against this team. I have to really think about like how do I play around the natural bulk of this team and the natural sort of like redirection and utility and like counter pressure that it's providing. That like opens a lot of room for Kingler and Nalego and Crocodile, for instance. Like I think they have a lot of breathing room on this team, which is really nice for Pokemon like that.
I also just noticed you've got a beat up option with Justified Arcanine with a Whimsicott. Although I do think that Arcanine's one of the worst Justified users.
Yeah.
Or at least not worse. One of the less. It doesn't fully utilize it. Even with a +4 attack, sometimes it just doesn't do enough damage.
Yeah. I would have to disagree based on my calcs.
I only say that because I've used Arcanine in 2, maybe 3 leagues now. And I've used the Justified beat up strat, and it's always just fallen that little bit short. I know that Whimsicott is quite a fast mon, so it might be of more use because you've got a faster beat up user than I would typically have. So he might be able to do some good damage there, but yeah, I think that Arcanine just falls a little bit short as a Justified user a lot of the time. But my strongest mon, the star player of the team, all that things considered, yes, I could pick Whimsicott if I really wanted to be bland, but I'm going to go with Arcanine because I love Arcanine and I think it's such a good mon.
Well, you know what to do, Oddball. You just have to sweep him with Justified Arcanine when you play him.
Heck yeah. In finals. I'm planning on seeing you there, man.
Do I play you in regular season?
No, you do not.
Interesting.
Okay. Masenko and I are gonna do a friendly. That means that you and Matrix have to do a friendly.
No. I'll meet him. I'll meet him in the playoffs. The weakest mon I would say is Hitmon, and I like Hitmon, but I'm just struggling to see what exactly it's bringing. Maybe
on to the South Croydon Soars.
Yes, the last team.
Yeah.
Okay, so straight out the back, I've got all my middle ranked teams. I struggled to place. I rank these as number 11, but looking at it, it could be a lot higher.
Yeah.
You've got Tornadus and Pseudo Kyogre, which I'm not salty about at all. Wailord. With the Tailwind Water Spout strats. You've got Beat Up Sneasel with Terrakion. You've got Ice Shard into Unburden Sceptile with Weakness Policy, which is pretty good. You've got Comfey, which offers great support, which again, if you wanted to run Weakness Policy Terrakion or Weakness Policy Latios, it's unconventional maybe, but you've got Drain and Kiss and priority Drain and Kiss and priority Geiger Drain into them mons. You've got Mudbray, which is I've warmed up to the idea. It's got a decent attack stat, and with Eviolite it can be quite bulky. Gmax Gengar.
Yeah, there's the you could run Psychic Seed, Sceptile as well. NDD Male.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. And NDD Male is actually pretty strong. Like if you can get that moving first with Tornadus.
It's harder than the female NDD, but it doesn't have the support moves that the female NDD has.
Yeah, but it does get Trick Room. It gets Trick Room, and I think it gets Imprisoned, so that's also a strategy for it. So, like, obviously, this team looking at it, it doesn't really want to be facing Trick Room. It's all quite
but they do
fast.
have the
No
Gengar.
real Trick Room sweepers or anything like that.
They do
so
have the Gengar
most
to
of the
deal
time,
with that. Because Gengar does get Imprisoned Trick Room, so...
Gengar does get Imprisoned Trick Room, yeah.
Yes, he's got Trick Room, Imprison Gengar, Trick Room, Imprison Indeedee, Trick Room, Imprison Comfey, I think.
Yeah.
And Taunt Comfey, and Priority Taunt Thunderous. So he's got tools there to try and counter the Trick Room. Although maybe I would have liked to have seen a Trick Room mode on this team, but I still think like it's a solid team overall. Like, he's got the Has he got steel? Yeah. So I think that's kind of where I think the team's let down a little bit, is that it's got none of the completed cores.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's got Dragon, he's got a Fairy and Comfey, he's got Grass and Water, although the Water type's Wailord. He has no Fire type, he has no Steel type, and I think in draft, Steel types are so good.
Yeah. Steel types are like the best typing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steel type, and I think like a Fire type, I think this team just kind of misses out on that. But I don't know, maybe I'm overlooking something. So I'll let you I think I said what I ranked them as, number 11. So, Brian?
Let's see. South Korean Source. I had him at 15. There were a lot of pieces there that could do really well, but it's just that it's not the normal pairings. I think that brought my ranking down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my strongest piece, the Terrakion, and weak link, I believe I said the Arm. I'm not sure what the Armaldo does. I'm confused about the Armaldo pick.
Armaldo gets Swift Swim, doesn't it?
You get Swift Swim, yeah, and you can set
Yeah,
that
you
up
can
with
run
the
rain.
Thunders,
You can rain
or
dance. Yeah,
Tornadoes.
rain dance tornadoes with Swift Swim Armaldo. No,
Yeah, you can
it's
also
a bug and rock type. It's alright.
Does it resist grass because it's bug?
No, it's
Yes.
not. It's
No.
Neutral.
bug
Yes,
grass.
Oh, sorry. What I meant is it's super effective. Okay, so never mind. One option would have been maybe like Giga Drain Comfey, priority into like weakness policy, but that doesn't work for the Armaldo. But priority Draining Kiss does for like Latios.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Or even the Trakion. So there are two really strong things about this team and some weak things about this team. The strong things, I think, are its speed control and its synergies. Two things that I value very, very highly in a draft team. I think the speed control is very, very good. You got two Tailwind users, one of which is a priority Tailwind user. You've got Comfey with the most ridiculous ability ever to give it like super priority. Sceptile is insanely fast and can only get faster. You get the synergies in the form of like beat up Terrakion with Sneasel. You've got like I mentioned, if you have you don't have Follow Me on the Indeedee, but you do have Psychic Terrain, which can enable a lot of different things. True.
And Comfey goes before Follow Me anyway, so one of your key enablers is ignore. Doesn't really,
Right. So and then like of course you got Swift Swim, which doubles the speed of Armaldo. You got Gengar, who's also very fast. So like speed control, really good. Synergy, really good. I will say that this team, I think, I would argue lacks like power, like punchiness. I think that you have a couple really good ones. I think Terrakion and Latios are the main physical and special damage dealers, respectively.
129 physical, 130 special, I believe.
But then everything else kind of falls short. And knowing, like, I've been using Sceptile for a little bit lately, it just doesn't reach the damage thresholds that you really want it to most of the time.
Even with the weakness policy.
Yeah. Gengar is decent, but decent attacker, but he's very squishy and like sometimes unreliable. Armaldo again, like kind of suffers. I would, just based on my looking into Armaldo, kind of suffers from the same like, just barely doesn't do that much damage. Like kind of like Sceptile. Wailord is kind of the same. So I think it's going to be like, as much as I love the speed control and the synergies here, I think that they're going to have a little bit of trouble finding that exact like damage that they need to just like kill the priority target of the enemy team. Like if they have something that Terrakion or Latios can't cover, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for them, I think. That's just my view on it.
Agreed.
And you rank them where?
I rank them as number 9. So a little bit like in the middle. So I think if they can pick something up that maybe does a little bit more damage. Like maybe that'll help out, but I don't know.
A piece of information. We move on. So we did a in-division poll, which was provided by Funky, the Bavarian Landorus team.
Thank you, Funky.
Thank you, Funky, for your help. So everyone in the division, or nearly everyone, voted on who they thought.
Only 9 people voted in this poll.
Yeah, well, it was open.
A little bit
enough.
over half of the people.
You snooze, you lose.
I didn't vote. I forgot.
A fair few, at least half, voted in the polls, and this was the results of what the top 3 looked like for the Johto Division, and it was a tie between myself, the Welsh Wailords, and the Crummick Colossals. Crummick. Followed by, in second place, the Bavarian Landorus, and in third place, the Drowsy Dracozolts, which is, of course, Masenko.
Hello.
And this...
Honorable mention, the Charlotte Beedrills got 4th.
Well, 5th if you count the tied first.
Okay.
Just love it. If
Just give
if
me
you-
more
if-
reason to ban you, Matrix.
What's interesting here is that this kind of mirrors most of our top 5s.
Yeah.
So,
little
which the similarities.
I'd say,
So if we-
except for the Crimic Colossal, for me, especially.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
wrote
to be
it
fair,
very
like-
very low.
I don't know. I feel like it should
I
be done.
sorry. Sorry, Apple?
I was just saying, like, I feel like, after looking at it, it's not as scary as I thought, and I feel like it should be dropped down a little bit.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and that's similar to what my initial thoughts. I actually ranked when I did the poll. I ranked it Crummick, Bavarian, and then Drowsy. And since then, I've changed my rankings before doing this power ranking type thing. Just because I had a better in-depth look at it. When I did the poll, it was my first initial thoughts, and since then, I've looked more in depth at the teams.
Yeah.
So if we move on to the next slide, you'll be able to see a brief breakdown of the votes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got one vote for third. Let's
Feel
go.
free to pause and take a look.
So,
not much really to break
move
down.
on to the next bit.
And so these are our combined rankings here. Like we basically tallied up how each of us ranked everybody, and whoever was the lowest had the highest results in descending order.
So think scoring like golf and cross country, where the lowest score wins. So the lower your score, the better you were on the ranking.
And
Which makes sense.
as of this ranking, it just includes myself, Masenko, and Bryan's rankings because Oddball was a last-minute addition to the call.
Right.
But a welcome last-minute addition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Holy welcome! It's been great having you here. To be honest, it's been really nice having an extra person's point of view.
Absolutely.
One thing I did want to ask about this, though, is there any that you think would change after we've all talked about it for a bit?
I think my personal rankings would slightly shift after talking more about them. I think that the way that this list here in front of us is turned out, I'd
put the
roughly
Merseyside Marowaks a little higher, personally.
Yeah. I'd possibly move some of the ones near the bottom a little bit higher, like Merseyside. South Croydon Swords, in my opinion, a little bit higher, but this is an amalgamation of all our opinions. So,
yeah.
Of course, there's going to be differences in where we believe that they should place. But yeah, there's some teams that I think are stronger after discussing with you three.
And some
than
teams
my
may be
initial
even
thoughts.
weaker than we actually. And some teams may even be weaker than we actually thought as well after discussing.
Exactly.
This was made prior to our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to make an updated one. I think it's fine the way it is.
It's pretty close now.
But,
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, things would only move like one or two or three places at the most. I would think. There's nothing here. I think is at the bottom that should be at the top, or at the top that should actually be at the bottom.
And once again, this is also just the preliminary evaluation, right? Like there's going to be trades being made. These are like the pre-trade teams. So once everybody's made use of their trades effectively, like any of the bottom teams could hypothetically jump to the top and vice versa.
Yeah. Right.
So that's just something to keep in mind. I think it's really interesting, though, because I do think there was some points of consistency, right? I think some of the lower end teams, we all sort of agree, were not up to par. And then some of the higher teams we all agreed were like very good, you know, especially Bavarian Landorus, who among the three of us did seem to have the best like overall ranking. Yeah.
And just because of when we're ranking these teams, we're doing it mostly based around the mons that have been drafted. I mean, a player's skill is just as important when it comes to draft leagues.
Yeah.
Like, you can have an amazing team, but a weaker draft player might not be able to get the full effect out of it. Or you could have a weaker draft, but a really skilled player can really bring the best out of some of them weaker mons. Yeah. And honestly, I'm really excited to see what all the teams do this season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So,
this is going to be a very fun draft.
Oh, definitely. So, any final thoughts from any of you?
I think even though there were some teams that we had some pretty harsh criticisms about, or like shared concern, like maybe the Lily Cove Lycanrocs, I think every team is sitting kind of all right. Like, maybe you have to make one or two changes throughout the season, but I think everyone kind of has a chance.
I think every team could use a trade or two at some point. There's something somewhere that each team can do to make their team better. And I think even the Bavarian Landers could do something. So, yeah. That's kind of how draft leagues go. You make trades to make your team better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's all for me. I think we really went in depth with all of this, and I think that was really good.
Yes, this has been a very long 2-part series. But I think each team has had a fair moment in the spotlight.
And I think that's important, that we gave them a fair spotlight. Each team got a fair spotlight.
And I mean, just to reiterate, I think one of the hardest things about making this analysis was that all the teams are relatively solid. They're all good drafts. There's no clear weak team just because of you are at the bottom. It doesn't mean that it's a terrible team by any standard. Like a couple, like as you said, Bryan, a trade here, a trade there, and some of these teams could be looking like real powerhouses.
Someone should pick Darmanitan before the Soars get it.
Yes. I'll take one for the team.
Maybe they skipped over that part.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Let's hope they didn't watch that.
All right. Well, I believe we're on Bryan's channel for the end of this one. So if you want to,
I will go ahead and thank everyone for joining the video. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notified when I make an upload. Subscribe to Matrix, he's fantastic. Masenko and Oddball don't have YouTubes, so if they do make YouTubes, I will link them in the description. But other than that, thanks for joining, and we look forward to having you watch our battles starting week 1. Thank you guys. Bye.
Oh, just before we go, I want to make note that the Dark Lords Greninjas and the Merseyside Marowaks are planning to do a podcast with the basically going recapping the weeks as they go by, mainly focusing on their own teams. And we will link the Twitch account to the description of both mine and Bryan's videos, and we hope that you can keep updated throughout the season.
We may do a video series doing each week, but we're just going to see what their plan is first, just to make sure it's different first.
Yeah. We might do a mid-season recap.
Yeah.
That seems pretty reasonable.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, well.
All right,
Thanks
peace out,
again.
guys.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.